Hi, I'm T from Pilates Pro Maintenance. Today we're here with Gratz and we're going over the general maintenance of the Gratz Reformer. Today we're doing the safety check. Whether you have done the regular service, the side wheel service, or a full service, it's very important to always do a safety check on your Gratz Reformer. We would recommend sometime between once a month to once every other month, depending on the usage of your equipment. For the safety check, you will need a screwdriver, both the flat and the Phillips head, and you will also need both the skinny side and the thicker side of both. We'd like to say number 4 Phillips head and number 2, as well as the flat head number 4 and number 2. You will also need a 7/16 wrench or a 7/16 socket wrench. Today we have the 13 socket wrench, but you could have the 7/16 as well. And we have the 13 regular wrench for the main wheels. For the side wheels, we're going to use our number 4 Allen key. You can get the whole set or you can get a single number 4 key, and that will help you do the safety check to all the Allen key screws behind the Gratz Reformer. We're going to go ahead and start with the main wheels. The main wheels should be tight enough so that the screws and the nuts don't move at all. There is some give on the wheel, but the wheel free spins quite a few spins. It spins about 4 to 6 spins, and that's a well-serviced wheel and as tight as the wheel should be. If you don't know how tight it should be, for example, you feel like it's too loose on the caster, what I would recommend is tightening the wheel to the point that it doesn't move. So I'll show you how much friction it can get. So be somewhere around there where the wheel doesn't free spin anymore. When you reach that level, just do a half a turn back from there, and that will allow the wheel to free spin but still be at its tightest point. And that's how you know how tight your main wheels should be. It could be a very big safety issue. If the wheel is too loose, it can fall off during exercises, and it could just be very inconvenient if it's too tight and you're actually working against all this friction, thinking that you're just working against the springs. To tighten the side wheels, we basically want to grab Allen key number 4 and tighten them all the way. There is no in between that we should be looking for. We're going to tighten that screw all the way. If the screw keeps spinning for some reason, then you have a damaged caster or damaged screw. Either or need to be checked out right away, or you should call the manufacturer right away. If the screw doesn't seem to latch on for some reason, or if it tightens so much that the wheel doesn't spin at all, then you might need a new axle screw. The screw may have worn out at the bottom, and now it's not long enough to keep that give that happens between the caster and the head of the screw, where the wheel can free spin. Unlike the main wheel, these wheels will not spin 4 or 5 times. They'll probably have 2 spins, 2-3 spins at most if they're well serviced and tightened where they're supposed to be. As opposed to the carriage wheels, they'll kind of like free spin a little bit more. While we have the number 4 Allen key screw, we continue with the safety check by tightening one of the main parts underneath the carriage, which is the spring bar. Unlike the gear bar, the spring bar holds the weights of the springs all the time. No matter how many springs you're using, you are pulling onto the spring bar. The spring bar is held on by 4 axles, Allen key screws that are threaded into a T-nut on the other side of the wood where the frame is on. A common problem, apart from the safety, there is a common problem that happens with these screws is when they come loose and you push out on 4 springs, you will hear this loud cracking sound, which may sound like wood cracking or like a spring sound. And what it really is the thread of the screw sliding in and out of the spring bar and making this big rattling sound every time you push out on usually 4 springs. So we want to go ahead and tighten those. And again, maybe not over tighten. Just like the side wheel screw, you would feel when tight is enough. You would also feel if you can give it another half a turn. But once it reaches its spot, there's no reason to over tighten it to the point where you feel like you're breaking the wood or pushing the T-nut through the wood. You're just pulling it from how tight. You also don't want to break the tool, and even less break the head of the screw. If you break the head of one of these screws, it's very, very challenging to take out. You'll probably have to take off the frame off the wood, which means basically almost reupholstering your reformer. So over tightening these is not needed, but making sure they're nice and snug is especially if you're hearing that crackling sound every time you push out. Next thing we will tighten is all the casters to all the main wheels, which are these Phillips head screws. And I'll just go do this one for a second. Basically the Phillips head screws that fit right onto that side wheel. For this, I would recommend to use always the right size Phillips head. The thing about using the wrong size is when you use the wrong tools to the wrong screws or the wrong nuts or bolts, you're increasing the chances of it slipping, and not only slipping, damaging not only the tool, but stripping the screw. Once you strip the screw, again, it's a different challenge to take it off. You might have to take off the frame from the wood. It's just so much more extensive work that doesn't need to happen if you just use the right tools for everything. So for the casters, we use number 4 Phillips head. And just make sure they're as tight as they could be. These you could go all the way because they basically have a big T-nut that it's not going to go through the wood. I'm going to go ahead and tighten all 4 for each caster. Okay, so one thing we do like to do in Pilates Pro is that when we're using one tool, we like to keep using that tool until we're done with it. So there's a chance we would never just put this down and go to wrenches and come back to a screwdriver. Since we have the screwdriver, let's look for all the screws that require a screwdriver, and we'll get it out of the way and we'll be done with it. Now I'm going to switch over to the skinny side of the Phillips, which is number 2. Is a smaller size, and with this one I will tighten the kickstand to the headpiece. So the part that you lift the headrest up and down from, that has 3 screws on each side of the hinge. And for those screws, you don't want to use the big Phillips head. If you do, the same thing happens, is that you'll strip the screw more, and there's a chance you won't be able to get it out later. Now I'm done with all the Phillips. I'm going to switch over to the flathead side, the larger side of the flathead. And I will tighten the hinges that hold the whole headpiece to the frame. While we're here, we'll take a look at the bar that is inside the hinge for the headpiece. It's been known for that little bar to start sliding out sometimes out of the side. You can use the side of the flathead to put it back in there. However, be very careful to not puncture the vinyl on that little corner. The little bar as it comes out could damage the vinyl. but trying to fix that little bar could also damage the vinyl. So you just want to be very careful to slide the screwdriver or whatever you're using to slide it back in, and only press against the metal bar and not the vinyl or the frame of the carriage. And once you've tightened those 6 screws for the hinge on the headpiece and the other screws for the kickstand, you're done with the screwdriver. All your casters are tight. And now you're going to grab your 7/16 and just tighten the casters that hold the straps. The casters that hold the leather straps are the only screws in the Gratz reformer that require a 7/16 wrench to adjust them. Okay. That is the full safety check for under the reformer. Anything else would require you calibrating your straps, or you noticing any specific damage on your springs. To check your springs, it'll be a physical damage that you will see, either a kink on one of the rings of the springs, or you will notice just a general weakness compared to the rest of the springs as you pull them. Another way to tell if a spring is bad, as you pull the spring, you'll feel like this crackling feel. This was actually a feel, nothing I can actually show you in the video, but as you pull the spring, you'll feel like it's crackling inside, like if it's actually coming apart a little bit, although you won't be physically be able to see anything. That's one way to tell if a spring's bad. Reformer springs generally last very, very long. They lose strength, but they won't really break. There's a very small chance they would break or that you need to replace them, other than the lack of strength or the time to replace springs, which is, I believe, Gratz recommends 4 years between the time you receive your springs and you have to change them. The last way to tell if a spring has gone bad is when you're pulling on the spring, it should open evenly. All the rings should evenly open when you're pulling them, and not only for the Gratz reformer, for basically any spring in the Pilates community. And that's the spring check. You might notice some discoloration on the spring. This half of the spring is constantly rubbing against the vinyl. This end of the spring is constantly being touched by instructors. As you switch in springs, you will notice a difference in color in this end of the spring versus the part that's completely under the reformer. Once you've checked your springs, checked all your nuts, bolts, and wheels, and straps, you're ready to put all your tools and materials away and turn the carriage back over. Okay, turning the reformer back over, turning the carriage onto its frame. Just when taking it off, just as we did when taking it off, guys, putting it on is very precise. Not only could you stay tangled up there for a long time, but you could actually get hurt or damage the equipment putting it on or taking it off. I would recommend the same way we did for taking it off, putting one foot inside the well, grabbing your left hand onto the bar that holds the springs up, the right hand onto the frame of the carriage. Once you lift the reformer up, the side, in case you did not put the headrest to your right, the side with the headrest is going to go down to the well. So what you don't want to do is flip it the other way and find yourself with straps that are tangled, or you having to step out of the frame or get back on the other way. It could get very messy very quick. You can trip on the straps. You can trip on the frame. It's very easy to get hurt just turning it over. So I would suggest the side of the straps to go down. The straps may be on the frame. You can shake them out of your way in this position. If you had them any other way, it's very hard. You will put the frame of the carriage in the frame of the reformer, no more than 90 degrees tilted towards the vinyl. We don't want the vinyl touching the track ever. From here, you can just lower up the front end of it, and it will all lower onto the track. Once it's on the track, you can grab your straps. Before putting them back on, make sure they're really straight all the way from the eye hook under the carriage to where you're going to put them behind the wheel. If you did not take them out from behind the wheel, then your straps were hanging out back there the whole time. And again, only on the Gratz Reformer can you remove the straps. And I do want to run into one scenario with you guys, which is if you don't take the straps off the back end. Let's assume I didn't take the straps off the back end and I'm turning the carriage over. I did all the right stuff. I stepped one foot in the well. I got it under and I put it whichever way I thought was best. When I came back to putting it back on, something I've seen a lot of times is you come either from the wrong direction, which you did not put it on, or you step off from a different side, which will cause entanglement of the straps. So what I've seen is people grab it from here now. They realize, oh, I'm in the wrong place. Maybe they start doing things like this, doing things like that. By the time they're done trying to put this back, they're tangled and the straps could be completely twisted, right? To avoid all that, try to stay uniform to the side that you put the headrest when you put it down. And the same way putting it back up, you'll have the headrest piece just face down, the same way you did it when you took it off. And the straps will keep from being tangled. So as you may have, I don't know if you may notice this one. This one stood on, but this one came off. If this one would not have come off, they would just be entangled one with each other. Add your handles back on, and we'll continue the safety check. To safety check the handles, you will need 2 Allen keys, number 4. One to hold still one side of the handles, and the other one to actually tighten the screw on. So I'll actually take one of these off so we can see what it's made of. Again, it has a lock nut. So the Gratz handles are made of leather strap wrapped around this wood cylinder, which is threaded through a long piece of Allen key screw. So this is a threaded Allen key screw that goes through the handle, and another Allen key screw tightens it onto the other side with the leather around it. So you understand that you're not tightening both screws onto the wood. You're actually tightening screws onto each other, which is why you need to hold one side still and then spin the other side. Otherwise, they just both keep spinning. So right here, I'll hold this one still, grab the other, and I'll just tighten as much as possible. You definitely want to make sure your handles are always tight. Check these with your safety check once a month or bi-monthly. It's very dangerous to be doing exercises with your handles. You're doing your teaser on the box and these come loose. It's a big safety standard. Once your handles are tight, you'll make sure your foot bar is also tight. To tighten the Allen key screw that's under the vinyl for the foot bar, you might have to remove the foot bar cover, and you'll access the Allen key screw that's under there. And this screw should actually be tightened all the way. That is an example of a very loose foot bar spring. You'll put the footbar cover back on it, if it's Velcro, and just do the same thing to both sides. So it's very tight. Good. You'll take a visual look at your gear bar. Make sure that the hooks on your gear bar are not bent and that they're not loose, at least to the touch. You don't need to tighten these with the tools, but if they are loose to the touch or bent, then you might want to put a tool to the nut behind it and just tighten them. But for the most part, these hooks are pretty stable and the chances of them coming loose is very rare. You'll check your safety chain, your safety straps. And the main thing to look for in the safety straps is the same thing we'll look for in the springs of a tower or something, which is the wear and tear of the clips themselves. The clips do wear at the far end where there's pressure or adds, and you'll see a crease as the usage goes and the wear goes, where it starts thinning one end of the clip. As it gets thinner, it starts losing strength and risking the risk of it breaking one day. So if you notice any wear on the clip where it starts thinning, where the pressure goes, then it's time to change your clips. Your eye hooks that hold the safety straps should be tight to the touch. If the eye hook for the safety strap is loose to the touch, what you want to do is grab your number 13 wrench, put it on the nut that's outside, use a screwdriver or another wrench to hold the eye hook in place, and just give it a nice tight and tug. These are pretty tight, but if they were loose, you would just hold it in place inside and tighten it on the outside. Okay. Add your springs. One thing to keep in mind when you have turned the carriage over. I'll flip it under to show you what I mean. When you turn your carriage over, can you get back here? What we don't want is for the end of the hooks to end up this way, hooked onto the spring bar. You want them to hang loose this way. However, when you turn them back over, gravity is going to push them all down and they'll be okay. The ones that are stuck here, you might want to unclip yourself before putting the springs back on. What would happen is if you leave them, see these three are okay. They're all nice and loose. If I leave this one this way and I turn the carriage over, just this tension on this gooseneck spring would cause it to bring all the tension to the loop, which would, one of two things. Midway through an exercise, it would just snap into place, which make a lot louder sound than that, depending on how many springs you're on. If you're pushing out on 4 springs and one of them is just caught there and it slips, you're gonna have a really loud sound. Another thing that can happen is that it won't slip at all, but you could actually break the spring. The tension is in the wrong place, too much tension while it's hooked on here. If it doesn't slip and just snap into place, it can just break the spring. You have a spring shooting across the studio. So when you turn it over, what I do is I actually turn the carriage down and I actually get under the reformer to make sure that they're all loose and that they're all okay. And I do that before putting the springs back on the hook, because otherwise you'll forget or you won't notice that one of them is still clipped on. Once you've done that, you are done with your general safety check for the Gratz reformer.